right. I got so excited when I read the little item about this research study because it was all done by MedFarm Holdings LLC. And I said, I think that's the Bud and Mary's brand, which I'm very familiar with after meeting everybody at MJ Unpacked about a month ago. And that includes you, Dr. Duncan Mackie, because you're involved with the research that was just released, correct?
That's correct, Jimmy. That was all the analytical work was actually done in our lab.
And the results were fascinating to me because anything new and different in this industry, I love. I'm like a sponge. So, explain again the results that you found out that the testing in concentrates, which is really the highest percentage of THC in cannabis products, is far more consistent in testing than testing for flower and that THC percentage, which anybody who follows this industry knows between the hemp side and the MJ side, there's all sorts of issues with testing labs and frauds going on and bribes and all this. So, walk me through how you guys did this research and the conclusions you came up with.
Yeah, so Jimmy, we a few years ago recognized that issue, right? And in collaboration with the University of Colorado at Boulder, a collaborator, Dr. Bidwell, our lab, we put together some funding grants and we're able to get funded to ask that fundamental question. How accurate is flour? And also how accurate are concentrates? And concentrates, I love to lead with the positive, right? And so the positive is that going to be that high THC concentrates are really accurate. We're 96+% accuracy. And that at least people know what they're getting themselves into when they go to dab or they take a vaporizer device. On the flip side, there's also going to be the side that is the flower, and that's where we see something around 56%. And I'll tell you, I wasn't all that surprised. I've often told people it's probably a flip of a coin, and that's because of just the heterogeneous geneity of the plant. It's a living thing, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so testing for something that is a living organism and having it be consistent from plant to plant or even within the plant, it's going to have its own difficulties with it, right?
Right. And our world, which is dictated by laws and regulations and what have you, are being created by people that are kind of clueless because they still look at the plant and think it's a pill. They think it's just there to be used as intoxicating and recreating. And there's thousands of people that actually use this product medicinally. And that's
Correct.
where
Oh, I
most of
would
the
say
research,
millions.
right, millions. I know that. And I try not to embellish too much if I can help it. The bottom line is, if you are using this medicinally, you now know that the testing of concentrates and live resin oils is going to be more consistent than the flower itself.
Correct. And I think that anybody that works in the industry shouldn't be surprised. But again, the goal of our study was to find where we can be better, right? And I think everybody, whether you're a dispensary owner, a grower, a tester, hopefully testing labs, regulators, all of us want an industry that works. And that's really the essence of why this paper came together with the University of Colorado. And we did it in a way that removed our bias. We used a academic lab that actually married the de-identified data together. We did all the testing on site in my lab, just like an ISO lab. So ISO 17025 certified lab is what I run. And we did it just as if we were a consumer. We had a secret shopper go out and purchase as if they would normally purchase, and bring it in and ask that question. It's a very fundamental question, I think, within the industry, and something that I hope people get from our paper that we have an understanding now.
And there are labs out there. Recently in Massachusetts, there was one that the Cannabis Control Commission shut down. California, they've done the same thing in California. It is one of those things that regulators, whose job it is to make sure that the public is safe with these products, okay, has to enforce. And of course, some of these commissions and regulatory bodies complain they don't have the money to enforce these rules that they're making up. And I'm like, stop. Everybody makes excuses about not doing work. It's just amazing to me. That being said, we all want the public to be safe. We all want these products to be tested because the whole idea of legalization was to take it out of the hands of the illicit market, which would be the unregulated illegal market that still exists and has actually been flourishing during the legal rollout because, after all, there's too many regulations. It's barely fair for the industries that are getting licensed to even stay afloat, if you will.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
how do now I want to go back to the consistency of testing and especially those edible products because I can't understand how if you're doing a gelatin of the gummies or you're doing a chocolate bar with different squares and some states put a 5 milligram limit on each square, right? I mean, is it consistent? I mean, that's really my question to you, the scientist and the researcher. Is it a consistent result with these edibles?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think you're loading me up there for a win because that's another grant that we actually have. It's called Evaluating Edible Analytical Testing Techniques,
Mhm.
EATS for short.
Ooh.
And our EATS project is actually looking at what's the difference between a white chocolate, a dark chocolate, and a milk chocolate? What's the difference between a gummy that has a synthetic dye or a natural dye? These are all factors that, from an analytical chemistry standpoint, these complex matrices, those are questions I think that's what we're moving on to next. That's what the questions we're asking. And we're also blessed. We're in a state that cares. All of our projects are approved by the governor's office, their scientific advisory council. We work closely with the MED to get it submitted to the governor's office. And it's all this work is actually funded by the Institute of Cannabis Research from Colorado State University at Pueblo. So lots of people who are stakeholders who care. Are coming together and saying we have questions, let's address them. And I think we get to play a instrumental role here at Bud and Mary's, and I'm really excited about that work.
And you're actually describing what I consider to be the new mantra of the cannabis industry. If you really want to survive, you better learn how to collaborate, right?
Correct.
And create shared revenue opportunities because right now it's a survival game out there.
Oh yeah. Well, and science is collaborative inherently, right? But we're not just collaborating our lab and Dr. Bidwell's lab, Cinnamon. We are actually collaborating with regulators, with stakeholders, with stores, with everybody who cares, right? And if you care and you have a project, we want to work with you on it, and that's the most important, right? Keeping patients, keeping the customer at the center of all the decisions. That's inherent to our core competencies here, and so something that's really near and dear to me.
And we talked earlier about flour versus concentrates. And when you go into a dispensary, you look at the menu and then you see the percentage of THC. And 90% of the consumers that go into these dispensaries are looking for the highest THC percentage in flour, which is still half the market.
Yes, yes,
So,
yeah.
and in a lot of ways, you're saying, well, at least the concentrate results are more accurate now than the flour. And the reason why it's so challenging is the flour is a living thing,
Oh
just
yeah.
like humans. And it's
Well,
another,
it's not only that, so you have the complex living organism,
right.
but then you have post-production. Every post-production group does something a little different, right?
Mhm.
Then you have transportation, third-party testing, different packaging types. I know some states don't allow deli style. Colorado still allows what we call deli style wholesale, pre-packs, repacks, joints. Flour comes in many different forms and flavors, right?
That's
And each of those has their own inherent difficulty in testing, but also we want an industry where you have options, right? And so if we're going to have all these options, people love options. We should have accuracy for each of the options, right? And that's really where we're coming from.
right. Absolutely. So what is the most consistent, accurate testing for products so that when you test your products, what do you see as far as the most consistent? Is it the variation that's in the flour that's consistent? Because that unto itself is what we're
Consistently
saying.
variable.
Right, it's variable, right? I mean, and it's difficult to get it done the right way, I guess, right?
Yeah, yes. Concentrates. So whether it's a rosin or resin or a distillate,
Yeah.
All three of those generally are fairly easy to, from an analytical chemist standpoint, to analyze for a concentration.
Right.
They're inherently homogeneous.
Yeah.
They're often stirred. They're often formulated in a way that allow them to be really easy to test. Whereas something like a flower, and then edibles are complex. Baked goods are very complex. All the ingredients that go into a baked good, and then you throw your frosting on the top, right? Like you have these things that are very complex. And so there's a wide range there, right? And we are taking an iterative approach. We started with flower because it's the largest part of the market. We wanted concentrates because inhalables, high THC concentrates, because there's a public health component there, right?
Right.
Like if you overdose or you take too much, consume too much, there is the chance for anxiety causing, right? Like, and that might be something that you have to think about from a concentrate standpoint.
Right.
And now we're moving into smaller pieces of the market, but more complex pieces of the market where you're
Right.
talking chocolates and gummies.
Right.
um,
And
yeah,
you mentioned the word overdose. I want to
yeah.
make sure anybody who listens to this and is learning about some of the things in the interviews that we do, that you will probably not have an adverse reaction that will cause death. Okay.
No, no, no.
Overdose. No, it's very important.
Overdose.
It will cause an extremely uncomfortable feeling.
Very uncomfortable.
And it's why in a lot of new states, and I think we talked a little bit about Minnesota, you guys are going trying to get into the Minnesota market, the newest
Correct.
adult use market. I know within the next 6 months, you're going to hear stories out of Minnesota that is basically going to say, oh, emergency room visits have spiked. They're going up because everybody, and of course they are, because no, they're learning by doing. Just
Correct.
like all of us who went through this with alcohol as younger people, we learned what our limit was as a young person because how much is it going to take for me to upchuck, right? I mean,
Yes. Yes.
unfortunately, that's how we learned, right?
Yeah. And again, I will rephrase because the overdose levels of a cannabis level are quite high, A, and B, it's anxiety causing. And we know this. And I'm very upfront with this with anybody from a medical standpoint that if you take too much, it's not going to be a comfortable situation for about an hour.
Oh, that's right. At least an hour.
At least an
Depending on
hour.
how much you took. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
but yes, death is not something that is a side effect like you might see on a commercial for a pharmaceutical drug.
right, right.
You know,
And we could kid and laugh a little bit about how people are getting themselves educated and becoming more and more connoisseurs about the plant, which is an inconsistent thing because it's live. We get that. So they wanted a consistent, efficient experience. This is how the dabbing world evolved,
oh
correct?
yeah,
Right.
yes, correct.
And
Yeah, so concentrates are consistent. They're a consistent experience. The onset is the same because it's an inhaled route. It's pretty instantaneous. You don't have to wait like an edible.
right.
There's no combustion, so you're eliminating the smoke aspect like a flower.
Yep.
And so concentrates, there's a lot of reason people use concentrates. There's a lot of people that use a vaporizer devices. You know, they're inconspicuous. They're portable.
Right.
They don't have the flower smell. Some of them are flavored that have great flavors.
Yeah.
And so all of these reasons, people move to different form factors and different ways of consuming. But if we're going to have a consistent market that people trust, a regulated market,
Mhm.
I think consistency in testing is key. It's something that we have to have. And we're 13 years in here in Colorado. You know, 2012 we came online with recreational. We're maturing. We're growing up, right? And this is part of growing up is going through these growing pains.
Absolutely. And you use everybody uses the word recreational. It's adult use. We understand that because to me, I consider it a plant medicine, and you shouldn't be using plant medicines to recreate. That's how I look at it. Okay.
Yes.
Now that does, by the way, I'm one of those people that do as I say, not as I did. Okay. It's just sorry, but that's what it was. Back then we were learning by doing, just by trying this and trying that. Oh, it's good. And again, far less discerning now than what we're living with now, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
back then it's like, does it get you high or doesn't it? That was my big thing, and that was it. Um, I want to talk about the dabbing for a second because every doctor who does understand integrative medicine, does understand plant medicine, understands the endocannabinoid system that I've interviewed, continuously tells us that the safest way to consume this plant medicinally is by vaping the dry flower. That seems
Correct.
to be, and then I try to ask them the next question is, so is all vaping the same? Because it's still going into your system through your lungs. And I also have read tons of studies that basically say the vaping and the even the smoke of the cannabis plant is not the same impact on your lungs as cigarettes for sure.
Yep, yep. Well, there's a lot of processing that goes into tobacco. I spent 6 years at the University of North Carolina, Tobacco Road before coming into industry as an academic, and we have a pretty large bronchial pulmonary research area there.
Mhm.
And you're correct. Processing of tobacco leaves into a cigarette is very different than processing of a dry flower.
Right.
There is a lot less gone into cannabis that goes into tobacco.
Right.
To be as politically correct, I'll just be nice about it that way. I'll leave it there.
Right.
But you're correct. There are ways to vape drier vapes.
Right.
And what that does is it allows you to get the cannabinoids. It allows you to get the terpenoids and the flavonoids, the compounds in the plant,
Mhm.
without combustion, without burning.
Mhm.
But it also is not going to be such high THC dosing as maybe a vaporizer device or a dab.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a marrying of the best of both worlds. And so I do drive herb vape. It's quite a bit. It's one of my favorite ways to consume. Um, and I do think that from a health standpoint, that's probably one of the best ways to go. I don't think inhaling anything is necessarily healthy.
Right.
But if you are going to inhale, and
Right.
you're going to look for the best route for inhalation. Drier herb vaping is the way to go.
Right. And if you are going to actually combust, and again, I'm not naive, I know 50% of the market is using flour. They're using either cones, pre-rolls, doing it themselves, whatever the connoisseur, however they want to consume it, they heat
Correct.
it up, they get high, they smoke it. You're not, for the most part, most people, okay, are not smoking a pack a day,
Oh
20
no, 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 no.
joints a day,
Yeah,
which is what the problem is with cigarette smoking. And I lost my dearest friend to lung cancer because
yeah,
he got addicted to nicotine when he was 15, 16 years old. And by 50, he was done.
yeah,
And what the biggest shame about that is still one of the greatest athletes I've ever worked with, ever played. He picked up lacrosse in a day and made varsity. He's one of those guys, you know what I'm saying?
yeah. Oh yeah.
But let's get back to the vaping versus the smoking because it's still one of those things that is out there, and it's almost like I'd rather talk to a scientific researcher like yourself than talk to an MD because, as you know, they're barely touching it and talking about it in medical school now. At least the American Nurses Association has embraced the start low and go slow and actually is now having it in some of their curriculum.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, we have a cannabis medicine curriculum at CU Anschutz for the first time now, and so people in the medical field are warming, gently warming. Look, go low and go slow.
Right. Well,
Start low and go slow. But they're warming to the idea of plant medicine, of
right,
natural medicines in general.
right.
And so that's something I think we also hopefully play a role in, something that we're driving forward at Bud and Mary's. And something that hopefully this publication and this manuscript that we're discussing, hopefully that really sheds some light on things and gets people talking, and communication's key to improvement.
That's right. And my goodness, as someone who's been in communication for his entire life, for the most part, it's still challenging. And it's my biggest bugaboo is when people don't actually talk to each other, they text. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I pick up the phone, call me, and talk to me, please. That's how I feel.
Well, Jimmy, you can call me anytime,
I so appreciate that. I love that. And Duncan, you're terrific. I was glad we met about a month ago at MJ Unpacked. It was a great experience. I love the whole operation. I love the story of Bud and Mary's.
Yeah.
And I wish you guys all the best of luck and keep up the good work, please, because those that are out there, we're still in a learning world.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
and we're self-medicating and we're trying to figure out what works for us as opposed to you. And we're trying to figure out what strains are best and all this. I mean, it is it used to be a lot simpler, Duncan. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Even when I was younger, it was a
That's right.
lot simpler.
Which was, I know. Let's not go there. I
I'm
mean,
not going to date you though,
no,
Jimmy.
it's okay. I'm very comfortable with the fact that I'm 67 years old because everybody goes, no way, no way. I said, well, it's true. I said, the body's about an 85-year-old, but the number is still a
The
67.
athlete, you add a few years, you know?
I definitely was an athlete once, and I still live in the past. Hey, Dr. Duncan Mackie, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on a great piece of research that caught my eye as an executive producer of this news show. We so appreciate you taking the time to enlighten us a little bit more about the challenges that go into this plant. So for Duncan Mackie, I'm Jimmy Young. Thanks for watching our Cannabis Coast to Coast News special report, one-on-one for this week.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Pro Cannabis Media is now WPCM TV, your go-to website for things cannabis. WPCM TV is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news you need.
Amy Carter. This week, she reports from inside the State House in Lansing.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters with this week's Michigan Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
And talk shows about all things cannabis.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all you're doing to get the word out. Like, this show is so important.
It all started back in 2018 when Emmy award-winning talk show host Jimmy Young kicked it off with the In the Weeds podcast.
That it's not just any generic paper towel. You do have a brand that you use, right?
Yeah, we live or die by the bounty. I mean,
The quicker picker-upper. I love that.
His mission? Building an army of multimedia journalists and podcast hosts who are documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country and around the world. Fast forward to today, and we've got the nation's only weekly cannabis coast-to-coast news program with Elena Pinto.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News, WPCM TV's weekly production of the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country and around the world. I'm Elena Pinto.
Delivering the nation's only TV news-style program. Since June 2021, WPCM TV has racked up over 1.3 million views with 17 million impressions and picked up over 16,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. Now we even have our own app. For more information, contact the team at WPCMTV.com.